A big day for UCLA sports, but most importantly, the Bruins 3-0. Was it impressive? Absolutely not. But they're 3-0. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about that. They're 3-0. The most important thing about UCLA and Chip Kelly's season so far. 3-0, they got through it. Let's hit the music and get excited for some reason, despite all the naysayers. Let's go get hyped.
You are Locked On UCLA, your daily podcast on the UCLA Bruins. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey everybody, Zach Anderson Yoxsimer alongside Zach Handy. It's another Zach show for Locked On UCLA. Thanks for making Locked On UCLA your first listen each and every day. You can find it wherever you find your podcast, Apple, Spotify, Odyssey podcasts, or they're free, whatever. Just also go to YouTube, like, comment, subscribe, whether you agree with us, whether you don't agree with us. Zach Handy from Fox Sports, diehard Bruins fan. Both T1 play-by-play broadcasters. He's a freelancer. I'm a diehard Bruins fan. We're all excited about the Bruins, most importantly being 3-0 as they eke out a 32-31 win over South Alabama. The Bruins 1-point win as Zach Candy joins the show. And that's how we start every show. Get your hands up, Bruins fans. And it's Bruin A clap time, everybody. Oh, he jumped the gun. He jumped the gun.
I was ready for you.
And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, UCLA, fight. All discombobulated, all crazy, all out of sorts, just like the Bruins have been at times during this non-conference stretch. They're 3-0. They destroyed South Alabama. They did not destroy South Alabama. They destroyed Bowling Green after a horrendous start. They destroyed Alabama State after a pretty poor start, and then they got a win against South Alabama by a point, which, as I informed you guys with our most recent full episode before the weekend, the Bruins are going to win a close one. Did I say 32-31 with the last-second field goal from Barr-Mira? I did not think that was going to happen, but I did expect it to be close. Zach, off the top of your head, give me your quick thoughts before we dive in it through this whole podcast, the Bruins and their game against South Alabama.
I'll tell you my immediate thing I thought after the game, after we squeaked out of there and found a way to go 3-0. My immediate thought was, if this is the level that UCLA football plays at when we face Utah, they're going to hang 55 points on us. That was my immediate thought, because I feel like with this team, the only expectation is 10, 11 wins, a deep run, a chance at Pac-12 title, right? A chance at a Rose Bowl, a chance at being, a top 5 to 10 team in the country at the end of the year. If you get all those things right, you would think so. So that is where my mind is always at when I'm watching even these, early non-conference games with the cake schedule we have. And my immediate thought was, things have to get much better or the team like Utah will hang 55 points on us. That was what I initially thought when the game was over.
Yes, Utah, of course, one of the biggest threats for UCLA facing in that South Division, even though they're not really going Southern. They're not going in the Pac-12 by divisions, truly. It's just the top two teams make it to the Pac-12 title game. Of course, you look at SC, you look at the rest of the Pac-12, pretty solid, despite Utah and Oregon choking early. Washington State looking good, Oregon State looking good, Washington looking amazing by kicking Michigan State's butt. And let's be real. Come on, look at those top 25 rankings. They're all jokes, whether it's the coaches poll or the AP poll. UCLA's got to get there at some point, hopefully, but you can just tell they're jokes. UCLA at this point does not, at this moment, deserve to be in the top 25, but if you look at the current rankings, they're a joke. I think the coaches poll has Washington below Michigan State, even though they just dominated Michigan State in the game. You have Washington below Michigan State, I should say. Washington State's not in there because they went to Wisconsin. Well, what's with this bias? I remember I talked about this top 25 bias and the Bruins and whatever. We'll not talk about top 25. That's kind of sidetracking. UCLA, most importantly, wins by a point. I expected this. I'm not sure many of you at home expected this, but I expected a closer game. South Alabama was going to move the football, and UCLA was going to score points. And in the end, UCLA had an easy drive, theoretically, at the end of the game to set themselves up for a chance to win the game, which they did with the time expiring to zeros. Barr-Mira field goal, as short, as easy, as set up as you could put it. They did it. They executed. And after what was an atrocious week one special teams unit, the Bruins came through, and it wasn't the special teams unit that struggled. It was offense and defense. That was the problem for the Bruins. So we're going to start off negative, where it's early.
Sure.
Well, let's go negative. We're going to be very negative early on this Bruins team. Then we're going to tell you why it's okay to be positive, and then we're going to tell you our expectations of what needs to change going forward. Negatively, for the Bruins, let's start with one. They forced 2 turnovers. They only scored 6 points off 2 turnovers. Negatively, speaking negatively, if you look at the amount of negative plays UCLA had offensively, so many, whether it be drop passes, near interceptions at the goal line, which wasn't DTR's fault. It was Hudson Habermill not looking at a pass. You have 2 fumble exchanges on the pitch to Keegan Jones. He wasn't expecting, dropped it. The mishandle at the goal line between DTR and Zach Charbonnet, which would have completely changed the game, by the way. But for what it's worth, South Alabama made the play after the overturned touchdown, and UCLA found themselves down big early, down 11 points, down 8 late in the fourth quarter, or in the fourth quarter, I should say. And the Bruins, for the most part, not seeing a lot of Zach Charbonnet and not dominating like most Bruin fans would have led them to do. Zach, what were your negatives looking forward at this UCLA team?
I think you nailed it with that last one. The biggest thing to me was, why did Zach Charbonnet not lead my team in carries on that game when we had to find a way to grit, grind, and pull out this win? Why was we've made this debate, me and you, on this podcast before, like, who is our Heisman guy? Who is our leader on this team? And we said, is it DTR? Is it Zach Charbonnet? And I said, I think Zach Charbonnet is the most talented offensive player on our team. So in a game like that, when the other running back's going for a $125, they're chewing clock, they're moving the ball. Why are we not using our strongest asset in the same fashion? Especially when the week before we rested him. I mean, he hardly played at all the week before. I mean,
He didn't play at all. Charbonnet was in uniform, didn't play, and didn't hardly played in week one, which is your point. He's hardly played through 2 weeks of the season.
If we needed to lean on him at any point so far through 3 games, this was the time. Like,
He
let's
only
lean
had
on him.
13 carries
Let's
for 78
impose
yards.
our will late in this game. Like, yes, we've allowed them to stay in this game, and we have let a lesser team be here and believe they have a chance to win. Now let's impose our will down the stretch with this amazing tool we have at running back. And it just didn't feel like that. As we mentioned, Keegan Jones led the team in rushes on Saturday, and
With attempts, he had 14 to Charbonnet's 13.
I don't understand how in a game like that, if we've been resting him and if he is healthy, as they allude to us, that it sounds like he is healthy. Like, it's like, why did he not have 22 carries yesterday and we impose our will that way and stuff the ball down their throat and kind of take over the game later and not have to use a field goal in the final seconds. Granted, like you said, sure, we will walk down the field in that last drive and set ourselves up very nicely, but I think that was the biggest thing for me was, like, I guess we would put that under play calling or personnel call. Like, what's going on with Zach Charbonnet that he's not our guy when we needed him now, especially if we've been resting him. That bothered me. I don't understand how that was a thing on Saturday.
What's interesting is it's not like LaDainian Webb, South Alabama's tailback, was exactly a workhorse either. He had 16 carries and churned out 124 yards. You pointed out to me, Zach. He carried South Alabama's tailback averaged almost 8 yards per carry, a touchdown on 16 carries. South Alabama technically ran the football or had 34 carries. Webb didn't have the majority of his carries. Charbonnet didn't have the majority of the carries. Both tailbacks averaged over 6 yards a pop per carry. LaDainian Webb was outstanding. He even had 6 catches for 42 yards in the receiving game, which saw their quarterback throw 36 times. So it's not like they truly ran it down their throat. Yes, the yardage-wise, when Webb got the football, they moved the ball when they wanted. But a lot of the game was their quarterback in South Alabama screens to the outside, short dump-offs. And it was the inability for the Bruins. As you can see in the secondary, they sagged off. And under Kane Womack, whatever, how do you say his name? I'm messing up. The youngest coach in the FBS. He's 35. I'm screwing up his name, and I shouldn't, because in my mind, I think he might be one of the new young coaches that's going to get a big job soon. Right away, I don't think so. But this is a young guy who brought in a lot of D1 transfers and got his team on the verge of maybe one bad coaching decision away from beating UCLA in the Rose Bowl. Why they didn't go for it on fourth down instead of they utilized that fake field goal, who knows? They make that play. We're having a very different conversation. We're angry. The Bruins, if you think negatively, hearing out of practice from Monday, September 19th, the Bruins very thin on the defensive line. And that was going against the D line from South Alabama that had Mississippi State transfers and Florida State transfers. And the tailback in LaDamian Webb was a Florida State transfer himself who actually started games. So those are guys, Power 5 guys, despite this being a very young, kind of toddler-like, infant-like program in South Alabama. They've only been in existence since 2009, been around in the FBS for close to a decade. And they came in and practically, for most parts, outplayed the Bruins. If you look at big drives for UCLA, every single one was killed. If one didn't end in the end zone, it was killed by negative play. The first offensive snap was an indication of what UCLA's game was going to be. A weird snap, DTR to go get it, slipped through his hands, bad snap, and UCLA just looked out of sorts the entire game. And I guess the silver lining is, Zach, they won the game. We can go all day long as to just the screen game that South Alabama was able to hit, the running back having good plays, UCLA coughing the ball up twice, not looking good. But the silver lining is, partner, UCLA won the game. Quickly, give me one more negative thought from you, and then the rest of this podcast, we're spinning it positive. Go.
Gosh, I mean, I'm 100% happy, as you said, we won the game, right? That is the ultimate goal. Is that we won the game. I would say another negative that came out of this is one of our best defenders in Kirkwood came up hobbling in that game and was nearly injured. I don't know the exact details of how bad it was, and I believe I'm hoping he is going to be okay. But I mean, we went toe to toe with a team like that, and in a 32-31 game, one of our best players came out not 100% health wise. That is something that you don't want. I mean, ideally, when you see this game on the schedule, you want to cover that massive spread, and we have second, third, fourth string guys playing late in that game, and you're actually able to get some, maybe more Garbers time in at quarterback, and guys can be healthy. And instead, we're talking about it the other way. I'm begging that my number one running back didn't get enough carries in a game like this. One of my best defenders, it came out not 100%. So I think that was a negative, is that, as they like to say, you played with your food. UCLA played with their food that day, and they had to expend a lot of great top end talent on the roster, and there was some fatigue and injury stuff that came out of that, and that is never what you want to see when you have what we would probably call a cushion game early on in the schedule.
Yeah, and speaking of cushion, people were saying there's lots of cushiony seats available at the Rose Bowl,
Oh,
where we're
gosh.
not going to talk attendance. We've touched on it. We'll talk about it throughout the week. Of course,
Troy's not wrong. When you do get
Troy
to it,
Aikman,
Troy
UCLA,
is not wrong. He's
he
not wrong at all.
commented on it. There is even Locked On USC. Mark Kolka was commenting on it. I'm going to tell Mark, stay in your lane, man. We're going to
There we
kick your
go.
butt, hopefully,
Yeah,
in
I agree with
November.
that too.
This is why we need to come together. All the
Yeah,
SC fans talking mad trash. I want to
yeah,
throw
they
some
are.
F-bomb. I want to have a bleep button because I'm
Yeah.
just completely angry. This is what we need to do as Bruin fans. We're completely angry, right? No,
Right.
we need to come together and see the positives in this 3-0 start. Most
Okay.
importantly, as a fan base, come together and realize the true enemy isn't pointing fingers as to who's not there, but pointing fingers as to why we should build as a team, the Bruins themselves, and as a fan base, support this team in November, which is the main goal besides the Rose Bowl, which is kicking USC's butt, which is we see the other podcasts in this network's talking trash. We need them to tell him to shut the bleep up. All right, let's go. Bruins 3-0. Let's talk crap when we come back. Happy crap, everything. It's a happy Monday. Let's keep going. But first, what are the odds UCLA is still going to be undefeated by the time they get around to playing USC? Those are certain numbers. I don't have those at the top of my head, but let's hear some words from BetOnline. BetOnline is your number one source for pro and college football betting needs and sports info this season. UCLA doesn't have crazy odds to win the national title, but here they are undefeated. Let's see how they go throughout the season. Find all the latest football league developments, matchups, odds, news, podcasts, including this week's games. UCLA big favorites against Colorado this week. It's your continued source, BetOnline, for your sports wagering information, including live betting, esports, and scores, the fastest and easiest way to check in on all your sports and events, including Major League Baseball, MMA, boxing, golf, including the big fight of the weekend. You can also head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and the action. BetOnline, where the game starts. So we talked angry, sad. We talked angry, mad. We've done just about everything we could do, but talk everything happy so far in this first, now the second segment of Locked On UCLA. So Zach Handy rejoins us. Zach Anderson Yoxheimer, if you're listening to Locked On UCLA, thanks for the love. Thanks for making us your first listen each and every day. All right, we've talked negative. We're just going to we've talked about attendance. We've done it for today. We're not talking about attendance. We've brought it up. It's fine. We're going positive. What do UCLA fans need to like out of this win? Most importantly, the grit, tenacity. The Bruins have, maybe for a schedule that should have seen them win by 40 points in the first two games easily, and then they should have won 2 touchdowns against South Alabama, which would have been a nice win considering how, solid South Alabama, the Jaguars, look out of the Sun Belt. How many wins the Sun Belt have seen? Well, positively, the Bruins know what it's like to face adversity. They've been down double digits twice in their first 3 games and come back and made it look easy in erasing those deficits. They've overcome mistakes, and these last 2 games defensively, they've forced some turnovers. And what's funny enough, a funny stat I noticed, in 3 straight games, UCLA's actually returned a turnover for a touchdown, and every game it's been called back for either twice flags or for a knee being down in Kirkwood's case. So the Bruins are making turnovers happen. They're forcing turnovers. They're trying to win the turnover battle. And speaking positively, because we want to, the Bruins are 3-0. That is the end all be all. That was the goal, and they've achieved it in the most UCLA way possible.
The most UCLA way possible, 100%. I would say one great positive out of this is DTR with no interceptions in a game like this, right? I think in years past, when we were, on the ropes with an opponent that we definitely expected to beat on a day like that on Saturday, in years past, we may have seen him try to force it in the second half, try to will us too much to a victory, and he forces a ball, gives the team an interception in bad territory or pick six or something like that. And now we're playing from even farther behind, and maybe we come up short. And now, we've had this terrible loss early in the season or midway through the season even. And, we're really hurting at that time. I think it was great that even in a game like yesterday where we're fighting all day, the other running backs breaking off 45-yarders, and we're looking at the scoreboard, we're down 8 in the fourth quarter. Like, holy crap, are we really going to do this, this early in the season? And he was as cool, calm, and collective as can be every time he got under center. He pushed the ball down the field, 263 through the air. I believe he was 20 for 30, if I'm not mistaken, were the numbers. 3 touchdowns. So he was very cool, calm, and collected. They weren't giving the ball to Zach Charbonnet, so it's not like he was hiding behind his running back. The ball essentially was in his hands to win us the game. And as we've alluded to earlier, they really walked down the field to go win that game with Barr-Mira at the end. In that last drive was very clinical and very well executed. So I think that is a great positive out of this game. Sure, would I'd like to see him have that exact drive when we're facing Washington in a few weeks, or up in Oregon if we need a game-winning drive in Oregon this year, right? Am I going to really want to see it then? Sure. And that's when we really do need to see it. But I think that is a great positive. He was very, very, 5th-year leader the type of mojo was what we saw from him. And that's what we're going to need in big Pac-12 games coming up.
UCLA, my defensive star, the name John Vaughns came up a lot. John Vaughns he's the 2 sports star for UCLA baseball, football, had the early pick for UCLA. They forced, they got the fumble force on the first defensive possession. They got the pick. I mean, offensively, they didn't cash in, but they forced the turnovers. They were making the stops, and while, yes, they got gashed a little late, they got a little banged up, the defensive line, that's something to look at going forward. They were going against an offensive line that had a lot of Power 5 transfers, and the transfer portal fixed a little bit of the holes for South Alabama. The Bruins, they're a little lacking on the D-line, so they're going to need some pressure from the outside. They're going to need the linebacking core to step up. But what I liked was defensively, they didn't really get beat vertical. I mean, that's not South Alabama's game. They threw it a lot. But if you look at it, the only time UCLA got beat vertical was on a flea flicker, 37 yards. So they didn't get beat vertical. That's huge. And while this was maybe the first game that the running game of an opponent truly got to the Bruins, this was a solid ball club that they faced in South Alabama. And by solid, I mean it's a good game. I've talked about in the most recent episode, the full episode, how in years past this would be the easiest game in UCLA's non-conference schedule, or at least name brand wise, right? You would have maybe you think like, all right, like a Memphis would be slotted in next to a Virginia, and then technically the Memphis game would be tougher than the Virginia game. But UCLA had no name brands, and South Alabama, the youngest and youngest program between all the teams UCLA faced, they gave them the biggest game. It was expected, right? But they were going against the young, bright mind on the opposite side. And the Bruins, let's be real, they were coached up. They didn't make mistakes defensively, is my point on it. I don't feel like they made so many mistakes. There's little places they need to fix. That is obvious. But it's not like they were burned for terrible mistakes on the defensive end, in my opinion. There's certainly areas to fix for Bill McGovern. Yes, that is obvious. It's not going to be a high grade for the defense today, but UCLA avoided truly getting beat deep, and they found a way when they needed to get a stop on fourth down, when they came out in this weird field goal thing, whatever South Alabama wanted to do, UCLA got the stop. Thank the Lord that South Alabama decided to have arguably one of the dumbest calls in the history of a potential upset of Sun Belt versus Pac-12. Mind you, they had a timeout South Alabama had to use before that fake field goal attempt, which was only from 40 yards. But UCLA was coached up, got the stop. John Vaughns, that name defensively, he was huge. I remember going back, rewatching it, going through it again. His name came up a lot. And it's going to be the Muasaus who have to come up big. The DBs are going to have to continue to step up. And the Bruins linebacking core is going to have to step up for a beleaguered D line. Also, the all line wasn't bring up a lot, but it's the offensive and defensive line that's going to have to step up going forward for the Bruins.
Yeah, and I think the most important positive of all of it is we've gotten through this non-conference and we're heading into Pac-12 exactly where we need to be. 3-0, right? Like, did we want 3-0 with 50-point margins? Yeah, easy. It makes everyone's job easier, right? We get to come on here and say how much we love UCLA and how everything's perfect and everything's going well, but that didn't happen. But what did happen is we're 3-0 with, Colorado, whose coach is fighting for his life, former Bruin Carl Durrell, and
He
report.
should have been the first Pac-12 coach fired.
Yeah, and reports have already come out that he's going to be clear no matter how this game goes with UCLA. But writing is on the wall that this man is fighting for his job right now. And so what seems to hopefully be a 4-0 start, the schedule is going as planned, right? As far as wins and losses go, those are the positives. We are sitting here 3-0, looking to hopefully be 4-0, and the confidence, only gets better with every win, and stuff like that. So I think those are the positives at the end of the day, is that we are getting these wins and we are preparing ourselves to be in the best position possible when we face Washington, when we face Utah, when we face Oregon. When we have those games so far, we are putting ourselves in best position possible for whatever outcome may happen when those games come across the schedule.
For UCLA, I mean, the schedule's only looking tougher going forward. You
Better.
you have Washington at home on a short week after their first road game. That's hopefully the Rose Bowl. Come on, fans, we need to sell that one out. But I just think it's going to be a tougher schedule going forward. You can't go into Eugene. That's tough. Oregon came through with the big win against BYU. You have Utah, who looks for all intents and purposes to be back, ready to go. There's Washington. There's, of course, the SC game. And mind you, all right, Mark, we need you to pipe down the crap talking on Twitter. Worry, stay in your own lane, calm down, get out of here, worry about your transfer portal, NIL, fake money, whatever that nonsense you guys are doing with Lincoln Riley. Mark Colkin, Locked On UCLA, USC, calm your crap. Learn to not talk like a robot on your podcast, and we will wait till a rivalry week. We won't need to talk any more crap until UCLA and SC will play each other. And if you want to go look at his Twitter, Mark Colkin Twitter. He was talking some crap. We'll other than that, we'll stop with crap talking and all sorts of rivalry talk until it needs to come to the forefront of any sort. In the meantime, UCLA, it's time for grades. We're gonna go offense, defense. I feel like the special teams unit executed. That's good for me. It didn't have to go hard. Barr-Mira, 4 field goals. Logan Loya looked better as a punt returner. couple Kaz Allen returns, decent. I would just say special teams. When you kick a game-winning field goal and everything goes as planned, your field goal kicker, I believe, nailing some career longs and going 4 for 4 with Barr-Mira, that's all you can ask at a special teams unit. So, partner, we'll just give the special teams automatic A. You make a game-winning
Yeah,
field goal, and you
100%.
make
I
every
agree.
field goal, it's an automatic A.
Yeah.
Offense and defense, you go first. We'll start defensively. What was your...
I would say C minus, like barely passing. I guess like did they get the big stop right and get us in the game at the end there with the? I guess that's still special teams. Honestly, it was a fake field goal. Like they didn't even get the stop on fourth down.
But
I'll give them
technically,
a C
it's the
minus.
defense out there. That's the
Yeah,
defense when you're doing field
I'll
goal
give it a
blocks.
C minus because ultimately we won the game, right? And the defense got enough stops in the game to win the game. Uh, a C minus, just barely. The offense wasn't awful. Like I said, 3 touchdowns, no picks for DTR. There were the weird pitch turnover, and we turned it over 2 times on the one. So I can't give you too high of a grade if you're turning the ball over. Once on the 1 yard line with your star running back and Zach Charbonnet, and another one with your great backup running back on a weird pitch play to Keegan Jones, who honestly could have probably fallen on it, and it doesn't go as a turnover, but he wanted to scoop it up and still make something happen, and ends up getting kicked around, slippery football everywhere, and we turn it over. So, I mean, a C plus, and I'll give them a C plus because, like we have mentioned, they did go win the game for us and walk down the field and do that part, and that was great. DTR was fine, but I mean, offensively, it still could have been better. 2 turnovers like that are really going to knock you. So I guess I'd say like a C plus. I don't think either side of the ball gets more than just a barely passing grade, given how the game went and what we had to overcome to kind of squeeze and just manipulate that 32-31 victory. It took everything to do it. And I guess the A plus on special teams is probably what kind of brings us over the hump and gets us that win, surprising enough.
Yeah, if you think week 1, how
Yeah.
atrocious the special teams were, and how we said you have to grow your special teams is going to have to make a difference in a game. There's 3 facets of a football game, and despite some of them not coming on the field as much as offense and defense, if you miss any of those field goals, this is a much different game. You're not coached up,
Yeah.
as you mentioned, on that fake field goal. Despite how bad it looked, maybe South Alabama could have gotten something out of that, and they would have won the football game if they convert on 4th down, I believe, or it would have been a different game if they
Yeah.
convert. UCLA had more first downs than South Alabama. They were more than 50% on 3rd down and converted on 4th down. The Bruins offensively, over 400 yards of offense, kept South Alabama to less than 400 yards of offense. Bruins getting about 8 yards, close to 9 yards per pass, no picks. Got about, 144 on the grounds. 4 penalties, which were huge. A couple of key dumb penalties. Lost the possession game. But this is what I'm thinking. Defensively, we're going to go with the C. A little bit better. As I said, a little bit better than you, but we'll go with the C. And, sometimes depending which grading skill you use, a C minus and a C does affect the GPA. But in our case, they're pretty much the same. I'm a little. I like the fact that they're forcing turnovers. They came through. They got that stop early in the 4th quarter that gave UCLA the football back, I believe, with 10 minutes left. They could have taken the lead in the early 4th quarter,
Yep.
and UCLA didn't.
Right.
So defense, I feel like, did their thing. They got 2 turnovers, and the offense only got 6 points out of it.
Right.
So in terms of efficiency, red zone efficiency, I'm going to go C for the defense, and bear with me, C minus for the offense.
Ooh.
C minus for the offense. Think about it. Their red zone efficiency was not strong. If you look at little decent plays here and there, I'm trying to pull it up, but just simply the times that they needed to be good, they were not good. Overall, they just failed in certain parts of the game to score. They turned it over twice. Stupid, dumb turnovers. But
Are
they
you
were able to find a way to move the ball. And UCLA's offense is expected to be good.
right?
It's the defense that came in with all the problems. And it was the defense that forced 2 turnovers, got the turnover on downs. And yes, they did allow 31 points to South Alabama, but 14 of those points came off of stupid turnovers, including one that was handed to the Jaguars at UCLA's 8-yard line. You can't really fault the defense on that. You fumble the football again at the 1-yard line. So for UCLA at the Jaguar 1-yard line, So what's the defense supposed to do? Well, what are they supposed to do when you're? I mean, I know you want to stop and change momentum, but I give the defense a little bit better grade, a C against South Alabama, and the Bruins offense gets a C minus. To be
Yeah.
quite honest, they didn't convert the red zone. They had plenty of opportunities and two terrible turnovers. I know we said positive, but this is the harsh reality of it, the reaction part of it. The Bruins did not play well. South Alabama is better than we're all thinking and giving them credit for. But to be quite honest, the Bruins could have won this game by 2 touchdowns. That's just the
100%.
that's the harsh, easy reality of it. They could have and probably should have won this game going away, a close 2 touchdown game. There's different types of 2 touchdown games. The Bruins could have won this in a close 2-score game, but they took it down to the final play.
Are you worried, or I don't know if worried's the right word, but offensively, is it like execution or is it like personnel play calling, as we mentioned? Like, what bothers you more, execution or the fact that Zach Charbonnet didn't lead our team in carries and we had to win on a game-winning field goal? That just like those two things I feel like should never coincide.
I think, I think Charbonnet isn't necessarily. You just see Charbonnet. It didn't look as explosive as Charbonnet should, but he did make some great plays. Zach Charbonnet, 70 plus yards, and it is scary that he's not getting a high pitch count. I know running backs coach Deshaun Foster said no, we're not going to abuse Charbonnet, especially early. That's key to note. But it is not nice. It's not good to see Charbonnet not getting a lot of touches in terms of, all right, you mentioned it. It's the health of me that they're not telling us about him going forward. Maybe it's not necessarily something big, but there's something, right?
Right.
For me, also the receivers, they don't have that deep threat. Like they're missing Greg Dulcich, they're missing Kyle Phillips, and I know Bobo's good. He had a nice game. He came up when he needed to in certain plays, but the lack of a vertical passing game, and that's not necessarily on DTR, right? Like we've seen
Yeah,
times
he
when
can't go catch
UCLA's
the ball. He can't go run the route.
like you saw, there's been plenty of times when UCL would have wide open guys in years past, vertical. That doesn't seem to be the case this
Jordan
year offensively.
Lasley,
Like
as
they're
you
not
said,
burning
Kyle
guys
Phillips, Greg
defensively.
Dulcich.
Yeah, they're just not burning these guys defensively with more vertical routes. So that's something to be scared about offensively. That's what I think about the receiving core. As much as we love Jake Bobo, he's not burning past these guys. He's a big threat,
Yeah.
but it's
I
almost
don't
like he's turned into a Greg Dulcich type than he has
yeah.
turned into what they need as a Kyle Phillips. Kaz Allen had 2 catches for 7 yards on Saturday. He was a non-factor. That's supposed to be their speed demon. He needs to make a difference, right?
I
Like
agree.
that.
I don't think the receiving core is, I think just to put it as blunt as possible, is as dynamic as we have typically seen in years past. This has kind of been a revolving door strong suit for our offense. For this team's offense has been, the receiving core is always pretty dynamic. There's always one or two guys that you can kind of go to that are game changers, that really make impacts on big games. And I'm not quite sure who that's going to be yet. Is it going to be Kaz Allen? Is Bobo going to come up and step up and be that guy that we can kind of just pepper the ball to and know he's going to be there and be the DTR outlet that can really stretch the field and open up a defense? I don't know if the receiving core is really that dynamic, and maybe it's just not yet. Maybe it does end up coming to fruition and those pieces do start molding together nicely, but I think you've nailed it right on the head. The receiving core isn't as dynamic as we've seen in years past. Something to definitely look at going forward.
And what's interesting is I feel like DTR is playing despite week 1, right? And week 2, like when he's needed to, he's played a lot better if you think
Yeah.
about it.
Oh yeah.
Like he's avoided besides that early turnover against Bowling Green week 1. I feel like he's played well considering what he's had. Hasn't had to be tested vertical when he needed to lead a game-winning drive. The Bruins, all right, little put it in his belly, play action, throw, first down. It was a they moved the chain rather easily on that final drive. That's important to note for the Bruins as they go forward in close games. They've come back twice. They've done it. They played in an early, they know how to turn the burner on and score points quickly. They know how to play from behind. As we have all that playing behind us. Yeah, DTR excited from behind, but the Bruins get the win. They know it's happening and they got the job done.
Yeah, I don't think it's quite the recipe we want to make like an every week thing going forward, especially when you get into conference play. I think playing from behind like that's going to be a lot tougher given some of these opponents coming up on the schedule. But good to know that you do have that confidence, going forward, that if you do get behind, you can look back on the season and say, look, guys, X, Y, and Z, we did it here, we did it here, we did it here. Let's go execute and do it again when we need to.
So Bruin fans, close your eyes. Let's all close our eyes. If you're watching, close your eyes. If you're listening and you're driving, don't close your eyes at all. If you're watching though on YouTube, close your eyes. If you're listening, just kind of take a deep breath, breathe in, breathe out. The Bruins are 3-0. That's what they needed to be.
Okay, you're right.
And it's highly likely they'll be 4-0 come this Colorado game.
Yeah.
Well, this will be a different feeling come next week if something goes completely wrong in Colorado, which it very well could.
Oh God,
If
don't let
Boulder's
it.
not been always friendly to UCLA, Carl Durrell is fighting literally for his job at head coach of Colorado. But UCLA has something to prove. Hopefully, the health of these guys improve. Whether if there's something nagging at DTR Charbonnet, whether the receivers get a little bit more open. But UCLA, this isn't like Colorado, who last year almost beat a Texas A&M team. This is a Colorado team that's been thrashed time in and time out. So for the Bruins, they can be well on their way to 4-0 with a Friday night primetime matchup with Washington looming, with their program rejuvenated at home in the Rose Bowl. So the Bruins are 3-0. We're excited. This is what we wanted. This is all what we needed. And I know regardless of what we're thinking about the coaching things, there's been improvements in certain aspects of either a team-wide defensive game, an individual game. Arguably, DTR is playing a bit better, not crazy dynamic running around the defense against South Alabama like he did Bowling Green, but efficiency, as you mentioned, when it came to avoiding the pick, he did that. So far, DTR, despite being pulled early against Alabama State, played well against South Alabama, and the Bruins are 3-0. That's all that needs to be said and done. And we're going to talk about this week going forward, some specific things that need to change from these first few games, some hoops news, and why we should be excited about the Bruins, and why the schedule's even tougher than what we expected. If there's ever a year to have an easy non-conference schedule, the Pac-12 is proving its worth this year. I know the Bruins are hightailing their butt out, but the Bruins, they still got themselves a very difficult schedule coming up. Division, you got non-division conference games. It's going to get tough. It gets real next week. Your first road game, always tough. It should still be an easy UCLA victory, as the first three should have been. But as we saw, it wasn't always the case. They're 3-0.
I remember looking when we did the schedule preview episode, and I remember going through the non-conference and then looking at the conference and thinking like, gosh, with the Pac-12 being what it is, this is one of the easiest schedules in the country. And now that we're going into conference schedule, and I'm looking at how good Michael Penix Jr. looks with Washington and how good Kellen DeBoer is as a coach over there, how Utah goes toe-to-toe with Florida, bounces back and hangs 70 on a nobody school, but 70 is 70. I mean, my goodness, and how good they look again this year. Oregon bounces back. Bo Nix and Dan Lanning have a huge game, and they bounce back and have a big win. I mean, it is not the easy cupcake of a schedule that I thought it was going to be when we did that episode about a month ago. Gear up for Pac-12 schedule, because that whole conference is playing at a much higher level than I think everyone, or most people at least, anticipated before the season started.
Our true reaction, the easy is gone, maybe except for Colorado, but the tough, it starts now. The Bruins go on the road for the first time. They're undefeated. It's undefeated 3-0 for the first time since that Josh Rosen-led team during the Jim Moore era, as they look to go undefeated deeper in the season for the first time since 2005. And mind you, folks, they're on a winning streak with Chip Kelly. They're putting up points. This is what we wanted. Was it a slow build? It's not the quick turnarounds like the Kalen DeBoers or what Jim Mora had coming in, taking over for Rick Neuheisel, but it's been a slow build to this point. And the Bruins so far, while making their mistakes in game, have not stumbled. And that's the most important thing. They're 3-0. They've got the dub, and we'll continue to monitor the situation, of course. But the Bruins, as we've said, 3-0. That's the dream. That's what we wanted, and we can't wait for more exciting, excruciating finishes at the end at the Rose Bowl, and now coming soon on the road for UCLA. Zach, thanks for joining the podcast. I'm Zach Anderson Yoxheimer. Go make Locked On Pac-12 your second listen with Spencer McLaughlin. He might have more harsh words for the Bruins going forward, as they narrowly avoided an upset at the hands of South Alabama. Again, the Bruins won it 32-31 against the Jaguars from the Sun Belt. The Bruins got the win. They're 3-0. Conference play, Pac-12 play is upon us. And the Bruins, for the most part, are rather healthy, and they're undefeated. That's all we wanted. Meanwhile, Bruin fans, get your hands in the air. One final 8 clap, everybody. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. UCLA. UCLA, fight, fight, fight. So for Zach Candy, I'm Zach Anderson, Yoxheimer. Go to YouTube. Go check out Locked On UCLA. Comment, like, subscribe on the episode. What your thoughts, your reactions were to the Bruins' very narrow win against the Jags. In the meantime, for UCLA fans, go check us out on the other podcast platforms. We'll talk to you soon. This has been Locked On UCLA. Go Bruins.